Measures, and I'm here hosting VM's monthly webinar series. Today's webinar is titled 5 Crucial Content Steps in the Buyer's Journey That Matter, and will be presented by a very special guest today, Paul Gustafson. Paul is president of TDA Group, Silicon Valley's premier B2B content marketing agency. Paul brings over 20 years of Silicon Valley experience to TDA, where he acts as the agency's general manager and principal business strategist. TDA is an award-winning marketing communications firm which provides a broad range of services to reach to engage buyers wherever they are, be it on the web, smartphones, tablets, or through print. Before we get started and I hand over the presentation, though, I have a couple of things to note. Today's webinar will be recorded, so it will be available tomorrow, and we will send out an email with a link so you can see it. We'll also be sending out the slides, too, so you can recap, as I know Paul has a ton of great information to share with us. We'll also be happy to answer any questions, so as you go through the presentation, if you have a question, go ahead and ask us. You can look at the question applet on your webinar interface and ask us through there, or go onto Twitter and use the hashtag VMWebinar. I'll go ahead and compile all the questions, and we'll ask Paul after his slides are over. Also, if you have any technical problems, I always find the best thing to do is to reconnect. So just sign off and then reconnect, and it usually fixes itself. So I think those are all my notes, and I'm going to hand it off to our special guest presenter, Paul Gustafson.
Thank you, Quinn. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation to present at your monthly webinar. It's a great honor for us to be here.
We're happy to have you.
So I think you covered a lot of this material about me. I'm actually not a cartoon character. I am a real person, and I do lead TDA Group. We are a content marketing agency here in Silicon Valley, and we have been around since 1987. We do run a number of programs for IBM and Intel and Dell and SAP and others. So we have deep experience in this field, and hopefully we'll be able to package up some of that expertise for our webinar here this morning. So you can learn more about us at tdagroup.com if you're interested, or follow us on Twitter at the TDA Group USA handle. So let's jump into this. Before we get started really around the whole notion of the content marketing approach to this, I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about where content marketing fits in the larger scheme of things. One of the assumptions that we make is that our clients have a sound business strategy. And we're not in the business of consulting on business strategy. There are companies that do that, Bain, McKinsey, and other folks that can help put together a business plan or a business strategy that makes sense. Once you have that in place, there's this notion of a brand strategy. And again, that's really not our business. This is where you define your company name, the colors, the guidelines, the particular personas and audiences that are going to be important to your business strategy. And again, we're not a brand consulting firm, but we are a content marketing firm. And content strategy and execution is the tool you use to actually implement a business and brand strategy. And it's the content that touches your customer. And that customer goes on a journey. They may not know who you are at the beginning, and hopefully by the end of that journey they're well up to speed and your advocate. So the rest of our presentation here really focuses on that journey and some crucial steps surrounding it. So let's jump into that. Here is a chart that we use to describe the buyer's journey, and you can see it's a simple graph. It has value of a relationship on the vertical axis and time on the horizontal axis. And the whole mission of marketing is to take someone from the lower left and bring them up through the sales cycle and into a purchase, and then hopefully a great customer experience. And content supports that entire process. Content is, again, the tool that you use to execute or implement a brand strategy. And there are five crucial steps. I mean, we talk about that in the title of this presentation, and here they are. You need to be aware. You need a potential prospect needs to know you exist. In today's world, a very key step is getting them to visit your website. You want them to learn more about what you have to have, so they need to share how you can contact them. That's an opt-in inflection point that's crucial. And then when the window of opportunity opens and they begin to shop, you want them to shop your site and what you have to offer, and then ultimately purchase. So let's see where that fits in the buyer's journey. That's really the left-hand chart of our slide here. And really the challenge at the beginning and really throughout this entire process is this challenge of noise. It's a very noisy marketplace in the modern world. There are lots of ideas and media competing for the attention of your prospect or customer. And the very first point here is when they become aware of your offering. And we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about branding and image advertising and promoting your offering with your audience here, but that is a key point. Once they become aware of your offering, if they learn a little bit more about what you have to offer, you may become a considered choice. And really that's when they begin to visit your site, where they might be looking for a little more information, maybe some clarity on what it is that you have to offer. At some point they'll opt into a list, and at that point you're really into the sales funnel. You're needing to educate that prospective buyer about your offerings and the differentiators that you have when they begin to shop and hopefully interact with salespeople and ultimately purchase. So on this chart, the tension between marketing and sales is really between the opt-in and the shopping experience. And this is true in many of our client organizations where sales provides a spec for what they think a lead is, and it's a particular title in a particular industry, and marketing goes off and they run campaigns and they capture names and contact information, and they supply those leads to sales. And what does sales say? Well, oftentimes the feedback is pretty direct. It's, hey, these leads stink. I can't close any of them. They're too hard to close. And the difference between a good lead and a bad lead is one that's educated enough, has enough understanding about what the offering is, that they're actually ready to enter the sales cycle. Also, this is pretty different from how it used to be not that long ago. It used to be that when people were entering the consideration process, they would pick up the phone and call a salesperson, and sales had the opportunity to help that customer through the educational phase. They could actually shape requirements and provide information that would help someone actually, come up that ramp. But now with the internet and mobile devices, customers are self-educating, and they're forming their own ideas about what it is that they want well ahead of when they'll ever reach out and touch a salesperson or an e-commerce site if that's how you're selling your product. So it's an important process. Content, again, is the tool you use to help someone up this ramp, because a prerequisite for purchase is comfort, and you can't have comfort without understanding, and content is what you use to foster that. So moving on, we're going to focus in our discussion next on really the top of the funnel to the purchase. And if we move ahead to slide 11, you'll see that in some great detail. And in fact, you can download this PDF from the tdagroup.com website. If you go there and search for anatomy, you'll find it. And it really speaks to the most cost-effective way to create content for really every stage of the sales cycle. And this is something that many organizations overlook. So let me just kind of walk you through this. The little light bulb down in the lower left-hand corner represents thought leadership. And that's the key ingredient in this strategy. If you have an expert, you have something that you're an authority about, you want to capture that thought leadership and publish it, share it, help your audience understand more about what it is that your particular business offers, and not just about your business, but about your industry, trends, best practices, good ideas, helpful. The idea is that you have someone who is expert, they can cover a particular topic in a comprehensive way and actually impart knowledge to the prospect or customer in a way that actually helps that person get through their day. If you can capture that thought leadership in a white paper or maybe a longer article, you can then repurpose that. You can break it into smaller pieces that are designed for every stage in the sales funnel as we move up this funnel, or if you think of it a different way, you can also see it as a bit of a megaphone, where that thought leadership, if you have a white paper, say, that might have 5 or 6 ideas in it, you might break that into 5 or 6 different posts, each one about a particular idea in that paper. Each one of those might have a 220-character description of that idea in a much shorter form. Why do I say that many characters? It turns out that in the LinkedIn news stream, the first few hundred characters are what you see on the post. So that can be a teaser and draw in the reader into a longer post, which can then lead them to a longer article or thought leadership piece. And then each one of those teasers you can tweet about with different points of view and different social channels. So the idea of thought leadership is you can use that to orchestrate content for different parts of the sales funnel and then use it as a way to amplify your social media outreach in a way that's actually on message. We do see a lot of companies creating tweets for the sake of audience building. And while there's some value in that, it's far more effective in terms of having an impact on sales to align that social outreach with the thought leadership that you're putting forth in the marketplace. So a lot more to say about this. We've actually done presentations where this has been the real topic here. There are places here you can see where there's feedback coming back from the social and the social outreach that you get in the form of comments and other tweets and ultimately leads. There are some best practices about how to structure these things, different attributes and whatnot, but this gives you a sense of kind of the how to use thought leadership to generate content that is designed for accelerating the sales process. Right? Moving on to slide 12, we are going to address the kinds of metrics that you can use to measure how you're doing with respect to content marketing efforts. The first bucket is really how we use the same metrics to measure content marketing that we use to measure other kinds of brand awareness kinds of metrics. We take surveys of people who are getting our content and consuming it, and we compare those surveys to folks that aren't getting the content, and we ask them what they think about a particular brand. And it turns out that over time, if we're doing a good job of content marketing, we can shift perceptions in the marketplace with the folks that are actually getting the content that we produce. And it may take some time to achieve that, but it does work. The other bucket of metrics that you can use is really around generating revenue. It's very similar to the way you'd measure other kinds of email marketing or direct response kinds of campaigns, with the additional bonus that content you can use to actually grow audience. You can, because of the nature of the social networks, people will share good stuff with their friends and colleagues, and that will increase the reach that you have. Hopefully, several of you will find enough value in this effort to actually share the recording with people that you might think it's relevant for. And it's a good example of how content can be used to expand the audience or the footprint of the dollars that you spend on content to produce it. And then you can see the other impressions, clicks, opens, conversions. Those are all very traditional metrics to measure content marketing kinds of outreach as well as campaigns. So all of that leads us to purchase. And I wanted to spend a moment on purchase because that's the ultimate goal. And in fact, most of our efforts, most of our clients, I would have hazarded to guess that most of the people connected to this particular webinar are very focused on new customer acquisition and purchase and driving leads into the top of the funnel and then driving them through the experience all the way to purchase. And that is clearly a very important milestone to reach in the relationship with any customer. But that's not the end of the story. Purchase is really just the beginning. the best qualified buyer that you have is a customer that just bought something from you. So we don't want them just to buy once. We want them to buy something else or buy again, and then get to the point where the only person that they're turning to for a particular product or service is us, so that they become a loyal customer. And then in time, we want them to be a reference and an advocate and maybe even an evangelist for our brand, where they're so excited, they see so much value in what we have to offer that they just can't help themselves. They're talking to their friends and family and anyone who will listen about how great the experience has been. And again, content, the same content assets that we use to power the sales funnel can be repurposed here post-purchase to increase the value and deepen engagement with our customers. And deeper relationships with customers equates to more value from those customers. Customers who get it are much more valuable than customers who don't. They buy more stuff, they buy more stuff more often, they upgrade when they're supposed to in the software industry or hardware industry, they understand and value the product roadmap that you lay out for them. They begin to appreciate the vendor as a strategic partner and not as a vendor, not as a tactical supplier, but really more of a partner. They tend to not shop from the competition, and they refer new business. And in fact, many times they'll come to you and say that they're thinking about a new initiative, or there's a particular problem or challenge that they're looking to overcome. They're not quite sure if you can help with that or not, but they'll share that with you early in the process and give you a chance to help position how your offering might fit in the context of that new challenge. And they negotiate well and are less price sensitive. So people who get it are much more valuable as customers than people who don't. Again, and the difference between those two is understanding, and content, again, is the tool that you use to foster that understanding. So some ideas around things to make sure are on your checklist in terms of moving forward with a kind of content marketing program. First of all, understand your business goals. In our world, most of the time that is a revenue number. It doesn't have to be. We work with channel organizations where they're looking to sign up X number of new partners this quarter. It's almost always a number, but it doesn't always have to be revenue. It might be some other strategic goal that you're trying to achieve. But there's one thing that's true, is it's the number that everybody knows about. You have buy-in. There's no controversy over what we're trying to achieve as a business. Once you know the goal, then you know who the audiences are. You need to measure and understand the informational needs in those audiences, and then find the experts and thought leaders in your organization that can help service those informational needs. The next step is creating and maintaining an editorial calendar. The Content Marketing Institute is a great organization, conducted a survey where only 20% of the people they surveyed felt like they were actually doing a good job with their content marketing efforts. And the difference between the 20% of people who thought they were doing a good job and the 80% of people who felt like they weren't being as good as they could be was that the people who were succeeding or thought they were succeeding actually had a plan. They had a plan, they had a calendar, and they were working it. So once you have that, you can line up the right resources and work the plan. And here it's really quality of execution is really central to effectiveness. Remember, content is the thing that is touching the customer. So if you're executing a plan with poor deliverables or content that doesn't address those informational needs, you may actually be digging yourself a hole in terms of the process that you're trying to put forward. So that concludes my prepared remarks. So I'm very interested in questions that you might have come in. We kind of sped through a lot of ideas quickly. So Quinn, is there a question or two that you have that might be relevant to this discussion?
Yeah, so please ask your questions. We have the question applet on the webinar interface, so you can ask Paul there, or tweet us with the hashtag VMWebinar. So I do have a question to start with, Paul. Can you explain a little bit more, which you had mentioned briefly, about repurposing content and how this can actually save an organization money in the long run?
Well, I think it's a great question. Repurposing content is just the idea around taking an asset that you may already have and finding ways to repurpose the ideas or the copy or the graphics that are in that. And I'll go back to the example of a white paper. You might have an expert in your organization that can help you construct or help you and your agency partner write a white paper about a particular topic. And that white paper might be, let's say it's 8 pages long. And as part of that 8-page white paper, you've got a couple of illustrations that help you explain key topics. Well, each of those illustrations could potentially be packaged up as a little bit of maybe a simple infographic. And you might write a little article about just the point that that particular illustration or chart is trying to make. And then you might, that's yet another kind of a second deliverable that you get almost for free in the context of the white paper. You already created the graphic. You already have the idea as part of the white paper expense. Another example is you might do a customer testimonial video where you videotape a customer saying, I succeeded with this particular offering, which is, frankly, a very effective tool to use really all along that life cycle. And instead of just posting the video, you can also create a transcript of that video as the foundation of a Q&A article about that customer. You might take that transcript and turn it into a case study with talking about the specific ROI that they achieved out of a particular effort. So with one effort, if you kind of are smart about the way you create that testimonial, you can get several deliverables out for a much reduced cost and use the same team to make all of those things.
It sounds like the opportunities are kind of endless, but I'm even thinking, well, this webinar you put together you mentioned you've had whole presentations for just that one image with different steps that you've taken. So even this webinar can be repurposed from the beginning and on moving forward too. So
yeah, no, it's a great insight. In fact, earlier this year we did a whole webinar around that one graphic. We have the infograph. We have a short video about it. We have the recording of that webinar. We have an article that we posted on the Content Marketing Institute about that same thing. But it's really the kind of the one stream of thought, one line of reasoning, and it's helpful to customers who are trying to make sure that they have content that's tuned for each part of the sales funnel. It's an often overlooked step, and I think that they're getting value out of it based on the number of shares and the comments that we've received on it. So hopefully it'll be helpful to the people on this event.
Great. I have another question from Mark. He asked, can you talk a little bit about establishing and publishing brand, tone, and voice editorial guidelines and standards supports generating effective content?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, Mark, and I think the key here is having an idea of the brand equity that you already have, and understanding where that sits in the marketplace and how the space that you occupy versus the space that your competitors occupy, and where you're trying to take that brand in the marketplace. And once you have guidelines that can speak to your differentiating claims and hopefully proof points around that, and you have messaging about individual offerings that support that strategy, that becomes the payload. I mean, we have to create deliverables that are interesting and that people will read or watch or listen to. And the idea is to package up that expertise and quite literally help the target audience learn something that they need to know or become aware of something that will actually help them get through their day. And I mean that sincerely. But while we're doing that, the art in our business is understanding who the sponsor of that story is. And what is the messaging payload that we're trying to deliver throughout that experience? So when you have a good messaging document that's backed by voice and style guidelines, the effect that has is all of the different deliverables that you're creating begin to reinforce each other. And then the cumulative effect of all the impressions is going to be more effective because you have consistency. People know what to expect. They're hearing about the value proposition from a lot of different perspectives in a lot of different ways, but the takeaways are the same. And that's how you kind of orchestrate this kind of an effort across multiple product lines and big organizations. It helps all the different agencies that you might be working with, all the different product groups, kind of get on the same page and help align the efforts so that they actually work together towards deepening engagement with your target audience.
Great. And this is actually a common objection we hear from when we're trying to, pitch content marketing or sell people on content marketing that might not, be involved with it already. So it comes down to, what if I am in a boring industry, someone says. What do I do if I'm a B2B company like concrete construction? How do I create content for something that's seemingly more boring?
That's a great question, and it's something that I think as marketers, here at TDA, we work an awful lot on very esoteric technologies, data center infrastructure and storage systems and high-speed networking stuff. And if you're a technologist, it's exciting. But when you're talking to a potential buyer of that, in the context of concrete, what are the benefits that concrete is delivering to its customer? What's different about the concrete that you're delivering? Maybe it's a special kind of concrete. Maybe it's being delivered by someone with more experience than the next guy. Maybe the cost of it is lower. I'm not a concrete expert. But I would imagine that that's a very competitive field because it is a somewhat commodity product. So the people in that business will have to have differentiating claims. And those claims will speak to the benefits of why their concrete is better than the alternative. And that's something that you've got to find will resonate with the target people who are buying that concrete. It's less about the concrete, less even about the company. It's really about the benefit. One of the charts that we didn't include here is a pyramid that we use to describe a customer testimonial or a success story or a case study, where the very top of the pyramid talks about the problem the customer was trying to solve. And then there's a little bit about the solution, but the vast majority of the story is about the benefit that the solution delivered. How much did they save? How much faster was it? What's new now? What new capability do they have now that they didn't have before? Those benefits are going to be exciting to your target audience, and they're going to generate results, and hopefully that's something that every marketer can get excited about.
I think even, outside of the story part and, all the different benefits, if you are in a concrete construction business, what of your competitors are actually producing content? Sometimes you have to ask that too, because you never know. Maybe they never even thought to do that if it's that tough of an industry to generate content for in the first place.
Yeah, well, I would imagine that a concrete company is going to have some expertise around concrete and common pitfalls, and maybe a buyer's guide that might help you be a better concrete buyer. There's lots of things that I can imagine would become relevant to that sales cycle, although I must admit I'm not an expert.
Right. We have another question from Lily. She asked, can you share some content success stories you've experienced or seen? If you could maybe provide examples of companies, cases, et cetera, where content was successfully used and what resulted from that.
Oh boy, it's a great question, and the salesman in me wants me to just have you go look at the tdagroup.com portfolio. There's a lot of those examples that we post on our site. I guess, gosh, what comes to mind? I think there are a couple. A few years ago, it's no secret that IBM is one of our longtime clients here. In fact, they were the first client that TDA signed. They came to us, the Alliances organization at IBM came to us with questions about social media. And they knew they needed to do something, but they weren't sure what to do. So we consulted with them, and we understood kind of what they were trying to achieve. We wound up creating a media property for them called Business Partner Voices. And businesspartnervoices.com is a blog that we produce for IBM. We help them come up with the content that gets posted there, and it's become the place where their very large partner organization, they have a a program called Partner World. It's actually the world's largest business partner organization. It's become the kind of the page one for that organization. It's the stuff that's hot. It's the stuff that's new. It's the things that are going to be most helpful to new business partners, or maybe business partners that aren't aware of new ways to engage with IBM and work together. So that's one example, but there are lots of them.
Great. How about, I actually don't know what this is, so maybe you do, but we have a question from Giselle. She said, is there any great benefit to having Google Plus personas?
Well, it's a great question. And Google Plus is it's the social network that Google has established, and there is some evidence that Google Plus participation in catering to those personas will have an impact on your search engine results from Google. So, but the algorithms there are changing. The industry's in a bit of flux. I'm not an expert in Google Plus personas, but I am certain that it's something that we're paying attention to. But I think that in a broader sense, the thing that's been encouraging to us around recent changes in the Google search algorithm is that it's beginning to really try to focus on what's good content. They really try to look at things that are being seen by the people that they're trying to assist. And it's getting harder and harder to game the system. It's really morphing towards a world where the writing itself, the quality of the content, is what's generating the higher search engine rankings and a broader wake across the various social media venues that exist. And frankly, the Google Plus has been a minor piece of that so far, but we'll see what happens in the future. I think we're at the very beginning of this process. Good question.
Another question that's very relevant today when there's a high number of searches that start on mobile devices. Maybe the actual purchasing decision doesn't happen until they sign on to their computer, but the actual searching part of it does start on phones and tablets and things like that. So can you bring it down and talk a little bit about making all of these steps work for mobile devices?
Yeah, absolutely. And mobile content is certainly the fastest growing part of our practice here at TDA Group. And the reason for that is that's where the audience is. People don't surf the web anymore. They search the web. The thing that they browse is their phone or their tablet. And the expectations for what the content experience is going to be on those devices are very high. They're being set by applications like Facebook and Twitter and Pulse that LinkedIn just acquired not long ago, and other things that are packaging very high quality content and making it very easy to browse and interact with and share content on those devices. Now, those devices are different. They're much different than the desktop. First of all, they're personal. They're with you all the time. They're in your pocket. They're in your bag. And the time of day, or the moment that you decide to check out a content app on your phone or your tablet, we're catching the audience at a different time of day. The desktop is very busy. I mean, I got my calendar going off. I have instant messenger. There's my 3 emails from my boss. There's several emails from my employees and clients, and it's a noisy working environment. It's not the kind of place where I'm going to kick back for half hour, 45 minutes, maybe longer, with a longer form piece of content. That's something I'm going to do on my tablet or on my smartphone. And in areas where there's some complexity, where there's a longer story to tell, subject matter that's a little weighty, it's really important that that content be optimized for a mobile experience. And there's an example that I can point to here that we are working with IBM on. There's an app called the IBM Content Zone, which is an app that we built with IBM that they produce an extraordinary amount of content around their enterprise content management product offering. And the content that is produced for there, we produce a fair amount of it. We don't do all of it, but a lot of it is thought leadership. There's videos, there's case studies, there's white papers. It's all the kind of customer-facing sales enablement content that you'd expect. But the challenge that they had was actually getting people to interact with it, getting their field and their business partners to become aware of what the new and best stuff is, and then to share that across the different networks. So we took a lot of that content, we created a mobile app, and organized the information by industry, and we're seeing good results from it. We're finding that people are much more prone to sharing content from their phone when that sharing facility is so easy, and the consumption of the content in terms of how many pieces are being consumed is much higher on these kinds of devices than a traditional desktop. So hopefully that answers your question about mobile. Good question.
Definitely. And a question from Deborah. How important are and what are your thoughts and suggestions about use of images in content?
Oh, great question. So images are everything. The picture says 1,000 words, right? And it's not just an image for an image's sake, but when we're constructing a piece of content here, really, regardless of the venue, we look for a couple of different things. One is in the context of stock photography or photographs that we're going to include for design purposes, we want those photos to align with the message we're actually delivering. The other thing that we see really I guess it's I would say skyrocketing in terms of demand, is this notion of infographics. And there's a wide variety of what I would call an infographic. There are these kind of tower-shaped things that tell a story and have a lot of information in them. And then you can take those infographics and break them into pieces and make them much smaller, a little thing that we're calling maybe a datagram, right, might have a particular statistic that's arresting and interesting. We can grab that and make a little graphic out of it and share it through a social channel in a way that gets shared by its target audience, because the stat all by itself is interesting. And so in that instance, again, we're looking for things that are interesting to our target audience and will help shape the way they think about a particular field. That aligns to the messaging and the brand guidelines that we discussed earlier. But given the noisy environment that we live with, visuals in terms of pictures and infographics are a very high bandwidth media to use to convey a complex idea or a set of those ideas in a very quick and easy manner. So they're becoming much more popular. Good question.
Great. Let's go with one more question, because this one's interesting. So talking about measurement, if you already have content that you have on your site or elsewhere, how do you figure out what is working and what isn't? What tools do you use and what kind of benchmarks do you look for?
Well, measurement is, everything that we do here is going to get measured. And we use some very traditional tools. We're a proponent of Google Analytics. We watch where the traffic on our site goes. We watch across social networks. We look at how many shares we're getting and how many reshares of that we're using. In fact, we recently discovered a tool called TweetReach as an example of a tool that can not only measure how many times a particular tweet is being tweeted, but how many retweets it's getting and how big are those audiences. So it's a great way to measure impact. Another thing to think about is many of the clients that we work with, content and metrics aren't the problem. There's just too much of everything. And they don't even know what they have. So oftentimes we'll engage with them on something that we call a content baselining project or a content audit that will identify all of the different content that they have, what do they have, what needs to be retired, what is out of date, what is still good but needs an update, and what's missing. And as part of that audit is, how popular is it? How many downloads is it getting in the venues where it exists? In fact, the download statistics around content or one of the motivators for trying to mobilize content. If you have all that stuff out on the sales portal and no one is downloading it, it may not be a sales portal problem. It may be that they're just not trained. It's not convenient enough for your salespeople and business partner to go to the portal and find what they're looking for. It's much easier if you package that up in ways that can keep them fresh and improve the experience, make it much easier for them to browse through the stuff that you're producing. So hopefully that gives you an answer.
Awesome. Well, I love something, I actually wrote it down that you said. People, they don't just surf the web anymore, they search the web. And I think that's really, really important in today's world and with creating content. So I think that's all the time, but I just wanted to end there because I really liked that takeaway from today. So
good.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Oh, thanks for having us. And
yeah, and please mark your calendar too for our next webinar. It's on June 12th, where our very own SEO specialist, Brenna Baldoff, will be taking on a topic lots of people want to hear about right now, the most common SEO problems causing penalties in 2014. So Brenna works directly with our clients to get them out of penalties, which a lot of people have unfortunately had lately. So this will go into how to address problems, how to fix them, and also how to respond to Google and get yourself out of a penalty as quickly as possible. So again, thanks, Paul, and thanks, everyone, for coming. This was a great webinar, so we appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Glenn. Take care.
Thanks, Paul. Bye, everyone.